Silverstone, where speed meets history and the roar of the crowd is only matched by the scream of Grand Prix machines. The 1956 British Grand Prix is here, and with the championship battle reaching critical mass, every lap could tilt the scales. Moss, Collins, Fangio, Behra, each with something to prove, each with everything to lose. National pride is on the line. Ferrari and Maserati are locked in a war for supremacy, and the underdogs are hungry to shake up the establishment. Silverstone has never been a circuit for the faint-hearted, and today, only the bold will triumph. The 1956 British Grand Prix marks the 6th round of the season, and as the championship tightens, the stakes have never been higher. With the clouds hanging heavy over Northamptonshire, the gladiators of Grand Prix racing are ready to unleash their machines on one of the fastest circuits in the world. We are now past the halfway point of the season, and the world title is far from decided. Ferrari's Peter Collins has emerged as a serious contender, his fearless approach earning him a victory in Belgium and a masterful drive in France. But the relentless Jean Behra and the reigning titan, Juan Manuel Fangio, are not far behind. Stirling Moss, Britain's great hope, still lingers in contention, though reliability has too often robbed him of his true potential. And as the grid assembles at Silverstone, the battle for supremacy is only about to intensify. For the British Grand Prix, Scuderia Ferrari fielded 4 drivers. Alongside Fangio and championship contender Peter Collins were Eugenio Castellotti and Alfonso de Portago, each armed with a Ferrari D50, ready to take on the high-speed challenge of Silverstone. Juan Manuel Fangio, the reigning world champion, had grown increasingly frustrated with the persistent mechanical failures that plagued his season. Too many times in 1956, his race had been dictated not by skill, but by the reliability, or lack thereof, of his Ferrari. By the time the British Grand Prix approached, Fangio had reached his limit. He issued a firm demand to Enzo Ferrari. Either he would be assigned a personal mechanic, solely responsible for his car, or he would walk away from the team. The Commendatore was far from pleased with this ultimatum. He had never taken well to such defiance, but the prospect of losing his star driver midway through the season was a risk too great to take. Reluctantly, Ferrari conceded, bending one of his team's long-standing traditions to keep the Argentine on board. Maserati arrived with a strong presence, fielding 4 factory cars for the event. Moss led the charge, joined by his regular teammates, John Behra, Cesare Perdisa, and Chico Godia. However, the Italian Marque's representation at Silverstone didn't end there. A host of privateers had also secured Maserati 250Fs, swelling the presence of the Modena-built machines on the grid. Among them was Roy Salvadori, driving for Gilby Engineering, while Umberto Maioli represented Scuderia Guastalla. Other notable entries included veterans like Luigi Villoresi and Louis Rosier, as well as rising talent, the relatively unknown Australian Jack Brabham. The British fans weren't just rallying behind their homegrown drivers, they also had high expectations for the country's most ambitious racing team, Vanwall. Founded by Tony van der Velde, this team had been steadily improving, and their performance at the previous round in France had sent a clear message to the paddock. Vanwall was no longer just an experimental project. They had speed, they had potential, and now, on home soil, they had the chance to prove that they could take the fight to the giants of Formula One. For the British Grand Prix, Vanwall arrived with a strong 3-car entry. Leading the charge was Harry Schell, the American driver who had quickly adapted to the British machinery and delivered an impressive showing in Reims. Alongside him was Maurice Trintignant, the seasoned Frenchman whose technical understanding and consistency made him a valuable asset to the team. But the biggest surprise was the third driver, a man who needed no introduction at Silverstone. José Froilán González, the burly Argentine, was making a one-off appearance for Vanwall, and his presence alone sent waves of excitement through the crowd. Twice a winner of the British Grand Prix, Gonzalez had cemented himself as a master of this circuit. It was here, in 1951, that he had given Ferrari its first ever Formula One victory, defeating the seemingly invincible Alfa Romeos. And in 1954, he had done it again, proving that his raw speed and aggressive driving style made him a force to be reckoned with on this track. For the British Grand Prix, Gordini entered just 2 cars, a reduced lineup compared to earlier rounds. At the wheel of the team's latest creation, the 8-cylinder Gordini T32, were 2 experienced drivers, Robert Manzon and Nano da Silva Ramos. In this year of 2025, we celebrate a remarkable milestone. Hermano da Silva Ramos, at a glorious 99 years old, stands as the last living link to the 1956 Formula One grid. A true legend among us, his story remains a testament to the golden age of motorsport. Nearly a century of life, and still, his legacy roars on. With only 2 entries and little hope of fighting at the sharp end of the grid, Gordini's main objective at Silverstone was simple: survive the race, bring the cars home, and perhaps capitalize on any opportunities that came their way. While outright victory was a distant dream, the team remained steadfast in its commitment to competing against the odds, just as it always had. In addition to the established contenders, the British Grand Prix also marked the return of Alfred Owen's ambitious BRM outfit to the World Championship stage. After a lengthy absence, British Racing Motors re-entered the fray, determined to prove that their powerful but often temperamental machines could compete with the best in the world. The team fielded 3 cars for Silverstone, with a lineup that combined experience, raw talent, and a fresh face in Grand Prix racing. Leading the charge was Mike Hawthorn, one of Britain's most promising drivers. Alongside Hawthorn was Tony Brooks and Ron Flockhart. The BRM P25, with its powerful but notoriously unreliable 2.5-litre engine, had the potential to be a serious threat, if it could last the distance. The team had spent months refining the car, addressing its weaknesses, and improving its performance, but reliability remained a looming question mark.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to Silverstone for the 9th RAC British Grand Prix. The air is thick with excitement as the world's finest drivers prepare for what promises to be an unforgettable contest on this historic circuit. Coming into this race, it is Britain's own Peter Collins who leads the World Championship, though only by the slimmest of margins ahead of 3-time world champion Juan Manuel Fangio. The battle between the young Briton and the legendary Argentine has been nothing short of thrilling, and today's race could prove decisive in the title fight.
The qualifying sessions for the British Grand Prix followed the traditional 2-day format, running on Thursday and Friday. However, the fickle English weather once again played its part in shaping the grid. Heavy rain on Friday all but guaranteed that Thursday's times would stand, making the first session the crucial decider for the starting order. Unlike the previous rounds, where Juan Manuel Fangio had dominated the timesheets unchallenged, this time the reigning world champion found himself locked in a fierce battle. His challenger, none other than Stirling Moss. The British ace, determined to put on a show for his home crowd, matched Fangio's best lap time to the fraction of a second. Not only did this earn Moss his first pole position of the season, but he also shattered the Silverstone lap record, a mark that had stood unchallenged since 1951. It was a statement of intent from the Maserati driver, proving that he had both the speed and the confidence to go head-to-head with the great Argentine. While the front row battle was thrilling, the biggest shock of qualifying came courtesy of Mike Hawthorn and BRM. The British outfit, returning to the World Championship fold, had been widely expected to struggle against the established giants of Ferrari and Maserati. Yet, against all odds, Hawthorn muscled his BRM into third on the grid, just 2 seconds off the pace of the front runners. His performance was nothing short of spectacular, not only outpacing his own expectations, but also eclipsing the current championship leader, Peter Collins, who had to settle for 4th place. Behind the leading quartet, the gaps widened considerably. The next group of drivers, 3 seconds adrift of pole position, featured Harry Schell and José Froilán González in the 2 Vanwalls, once again proving that Tony van der Velde's green machines had the raw speed to challenge at the front. Eugenio Castellotti placed his Ferrari among the top contenders, though he was unable to match the pace of Fangio or Collins. The final surprise in the upper order came from Roy Salvadori, who delivered an impressive showing in his private Maserati, cementing his place in the top 8 and adding further excitement to an already unpredictable grid.
At the very top of the timesheets, it's Stirling Moss in the Maserati, setting a blistering lap of 1 minute 41 seconds, a brand new lap record. The crowd roared as the home hero stormed to pole position, but right alongside him, setting an identical time, is none other than the reigning world champion, Juan Manuel Fangio, in his Ferrari. The Argentine may not have played pole outright, but he remains right at the front, ready to fight for victory.
Race day at Silverstone brought an unexpected challenge for the reigning world champion. Juan Manuel Fangio, already under pressure in the championship fight, awoke with a fever. The Argentine maestro was visibly unwell, and doctors strongly advised him to sit out the race. However, the organizers, keen to have the sport's biggest star on the grid, pleaded with Fangio to compete. In the end, whether out of sheer determination or obligation, he relented, downing painkillers before stepping into his Ferrari. Today's British Grand Prix presents a grueling challenge for the drivers and their machines alike. With a staggering 101 laps of the sweeping Silverstone circuit ahead, competitors will have to endure a punishing test of both speed and stamina. The full race distance stretches to an exhausting 475 kilometers, making this one of the longest and most demanding rounds of the season. Tire wear, fuel consumption, and mechanical reliability will all play a crucial role, as even the slightest miscalculation could spell disaster before the checkered flag is waved. Only the toughest and most precise will emerge victorious in this marathon of motorsport.
The weather remains uncertain. While conditions are currently dry, thick clouds hang over Silverstone, and a dense fog has settled over the grandstands. Rain remains a very real threat, which could shake up the order as the race unfolds. The field is set to the start of the race with the flag, and they're on.
To the delight of the British crowd, it's Mike Hawthorne in the BRM who storms into the lead, outpacing both Fangio and Moss into the first corner. But the real shock comes from further back. Tony Brooks, starting from 9th, rockets off the line with a phenomenal launch, slotting into second place behind his teammate. The BRM duo, against all expectations, now leads the British Grand Prix. However, not everyone gets off to a flying start. For José Froilán González, the race is over before it even begins. The Argentine ace barely gets going before his transmission fails catastrophically. As the rest of the field disappears into the distance, González can do nothing but coast his stricken Vanwall to the side of the track, having covered barely 100 meters. The first retirement of the race has come within seconds of the start. Peter Collins, who had struggled off the line and lost ground in the opening scramble, quickly sets about making amends. By the time the field thunders through to begin the second lap, the Ferrari driver is already on the charge. Wasting no time, he reels in Eugenio Castellotti, slipping past his teammate with a decisive move. Moments later, he sets his sights on Roy Salvadori in the private Maserati. With a burst of speed and a well-timed maneuver, Collins sweeps ahead, clawing his way back towards the front runners. Collins continues his relentless charge. His next target is Harry Schell in the Vanwall, who finds himself powerless to resist. First Collins, then Salvadori dive past, demoting the American down the order. Local hero Stirling Moss swiftly overtaking Salvadori to move into 5th place. With each lap, he claws back lost ground, pushing hard to rejoin the fight at the front. Jack Brabham's strong start comes to an early end as engine trouble forces him to retire in the pits. On lap 7, Fangio makes his move, slipping past Brooks and threading his way between the two BRMs. By lap 8, Moss is charging forward, steadily making his way up the ranks. His relentless pace is now directed at Peter Collins, who becomes the next target. Moss lines up the Ferrari with precision, weaving through the corners, and with a well-timed maneuver, he swiftly moves past Collins. On lap 9, Fangio, determined to close the gap on Hawthorn, pushes his Ferrari to the limit. However, in his eagerness to catch up, he oversteps in the Beckett's corner, spinning out of control. Fortunately, the Argentine champion manages to keep the engine running and regains control, but the damage is done. As he struggles to get back on track, several competitors zip past him, and Fangio is left to pick up the pieces. The world champion, once near the front, now finds himself back in 6th place, with a lot of work ahead to recover. Brooks, struggling with his pace, starts to lose more ground, as he is passed by Moss and Salvadori, one after the other. On lap 11, Fangio, having shaken off the effects of his earlier mistake, begins to make his move once again. With relentless focus, he surges past his teammate Collins, leaving the Englishman behind as he charges forward. 4 laps later, Fangio catches up with Brooks. Without hesitation, the Argentine makes his move, overtaking the Englishman with precision and reclaiming 4th place as he continues to push forward in the race. After a few laps of relentless pressure, Moss reels in Hawthorn. With a precise maneuver, he smoothly edges past the British driver, claiming the lead and establishing himself at the front of the pack. On lap 21, Salvadori makes his move, swiftly overtaking Hawthorn and seizing 2nd place with ease. Hawthorn's BRM begins to suffer from a transmission oil failure, forcing the British driver to pull into the pits and retire from the race. On lap 35, disaster strikes for Brooks as the throttle drive fails on his BRM. He manages to limp back to the pits, where the mechanics quickly spring into action, repairing the drive. After a brief stop, Brooks re-emerges on track in 5th place, losing only 1 position to Collins. However, after just 5 laps, the throttle drive on Brooks' BRM fails again, this time jamming in the open position. The Englishman is sent flying off the track at high speed into Abbey. As some marshals rush to extinguish the fire engulfing the car, others quickly approach Brooks, who is conscious but dazed. Thankfully, he is able to move on his own, albeit with a limp. On lap 65, disaster strikes for Collins as the oil pump on his Ferrari fails. The sudden loss of oil pressure causes the engine to overheat, and with no choice but to retire, Collins is forced to pull off the track and abandon the race. Behra, who has been closely tailing de Portigo for several laps, finally seizes his opportunity. With a well-timed move, the Frenchman overtakes the Spanish nobleman, charging into the top 3. The misfiring issues on Moss's Maserati continue to worsen, forcing the Englishman to make a pit stop for repairs. The mechanics quickly diagnose faulty ignition wires and replace them, sending Moss back onto the track. However, the delay means Moss now finds himself in 2nd place, as Fangio takes the lead in the race. Refusing to ease off, digs deep and extracts everything from his Maserati. With sheer power, he posts the fastest lap of the race, setting a scorching time of 1:43.2. On lap 75, the young Ferrari driver, Alfonso de Portigo, strikes back at Behra with a brilliant move, reclaiming third position and pushing the Frenchman back. But team orders come into play as the Scuderia makes a decisive move. De Portigo pulls into the pits, handing over his Ferrari to Collins. It's clear now that Ferrari is prioritizing Collins's championship bid, giving him the chance to score crucial points. With just 6 laps remaining, disaster strikes for Moss as his transmission succumbs to failure. Frustrated and unable to continue, the Englishman is forced to pull off to the side of the road, relinquishing second place to Collins, who now moves up a position in the race. Moss's hopes of a podium vanish in an instant, leaving him to watch as the battle for the top spots unfolds without him. After a grueling race filled with retirements and mechanical woes for his competitors, a thoroughly exhausted Fangio crosses the finish line in first place, clinching his long-awaited victory at the British Grand Prix. Despite the challenges he faced throughout the race, the Argentine ace held his ground and outlasted the rest. Peter Collins secures second place, crossing the line a lap behind Fangio, but his effort is still enough to keep him in the hunt for the title. Thanks to the strategic team move involving his teammate, Alfonso de Portigo, who handed over his Ferrari to Collins earlier in the race, the Englishman is able to earn valuable points. These points help him maintain his lead in the championship, but with Fangio's win closing the gap, the battle for the title is shaping up to be a thrilling one as the season progresses. In the meantime, Jean Behra takes third place, a finish that wasn't marked by extraordinary speed, but rather by his consistency and reliability. This result secures his second podium of the season, keeping him firmly in contention for the championship as the season heads into its final stages. As for the 4th and 5th places, they are claimed by Jack Fairman and Horace Gould, who both capitalized on the numerous retirements of their rivals. This allowed them to score their first points in Formula One, marking a significant achievement in their careers and giving their teams a much-needed boost in the standings. As we look at the current championship standings, Peter Collins remains in the lead with 22 points, continuing to hold on to the top spot. But with just 1 point between him and his nearest rival, Juan Manuel Fangio, who sits at 21 points, the battle for the championship is far from over. In third, we have Jean Behra with 18 points, who is still very much in the fight for the title. The Frenchman's consistency have kept him in contention, and he'll be looking to capitalize on any opportunities in the remaining races. But for Stirling Moss, sitting at 13 points, it must feel like a bitter pill to swallow. Despite his undeniable skill and speed, Moss faces disappointment as he watches the championship slip away. With so many dramatic moments in this season, Moss finds himself in a position where time is running out to make up the deficit. As we wrap up the action here at Silverstone, the road to the championship takes us to a place where every driver must confront their deepest fears. Next up, it's the 1956 German Grand Prix at the infamous Nürburgring, where the track's brutal 22 kilometers of unforgiving twists and elevation changes demand nothing less than total focus and skill.